We'll be continuing just now with our next panel discussion. This is about cooperatives, and we heard before that there are different legal forms that can be pursued in the social economy, but of course cooperatives are really a core part of that. I think many social entrepreneurs have chosen this particular legal form. So let's have a look at the contribution cooperatives are making to the social economy. Regina Nudge is a lawyer and expert in this particular field. She will be guiding us through this panel discussion. Over to you. Guests, welcome to Halle 7 in Basel. Viewers at home watching on your screens, welcome to the Swiss Social Economy Forum here in Basel. Today, my name is Regina Nudge. I am a practicing lawyer in Bern, and I have been working for over 20 years in the field of the rights and obligations of cooperatives. It's a particular joy for me today to be able to head up this panel on cooperatives as part of the social economy. Now, SENS has four very interesting panel participants for us today. I'd like to welcome Clara Riemann. She is a member of the board. She is chairwoman of the board at Project R Cooperative. She's also a member of the board at the subsidiary Republik Magazin. Now, Project R is committed to journalism and conveying information that is important for citizens to be able to gain a basis of knowledge and form their opinions. Now, to this end, Project R has a digital magazine that it publishes, and this is called Republik. Dominik Vasa. Dominik Vasa is the creative brain behind the food cooperative initiative Rampe 21 in Zurich. He coordinates and heads up this organization. Now, the foodstuff cooperative Rampe 21 is all about criticizing the current model of supermarkets and organic food produce shops. And I'd like to have an entirely new approach to this with an entirely new organizational approach to go with it. Andreas Appenzeller heads up the Special Projects Unit at the EDEV Energy Cooperative. Now, the ADEV Cooperative has been in this field since 1985, shaping the sustainable energy provision sector in Switzerland. And our speaker here today has been with the cooperative since more recently. He was a member of the board there and is now more focused on pushing forward the energy turnaround. Max Ruri has been part of senior management at FGB Cooperative Bank for some time now, since 2013. The FGB Cooperative Bank is a Swiss investment and credit bank headquartered in Basel. It is a non-profit organization, it is cooperative, and has the target to deal sustainably with funds in order to promote the kind of economy that will see money flow where it needs to be to social and sustainable ends. Well, cooperatives. A cooperative is one of the legal forms that is foreseen by Swiss law to enable us to pursue these endeavors. As a social entrepreneur, it's not necessarily a question of legal form. This is a mindset in and of itself, and nonetheless, cooperatives seem to have certain characteristics that make them particularly suitable for this environment. Now, this is where you have stakeholders come together on a voluntary basis, investing their efforts to an end of producing economic benefit, yes, but for the group and for the general public. It's not about maximizing profit. Instead, it's about democracy. It's about having everyone have their say to shape what happens. So we have some topical areas today to look into. What roles do cooperatives play in the Swiss economy? What role do cooperatives play as a legal form in your particular companies? What impact does that have? How might we see even more cooperatives, and what contribution can these make towards solving social challenges? What challenges will be faced by those looking to found a cooperative or those who are attempting to manage one? So, Dominik Vaza, you initiated the food cooperative Rampet 21. This is a cooperative that is really in its infancy just now. Why did you choose the legal form cooperative? Well, for us from the very beginning, it was clear that a cooperative would be the ideal legal construct for us. It would enable us to pursue our interests, and it would give us a framework of rules to abide by. We wanted to provide the system with foodstuffs, but have it be part of a greater whole in agriculture and change the way things are organized. We are very much of the opinion that providing food is not something that should be regulated by the market or be a question of profit, but that instead everyone who is part of it should be able to have a say. And I think in a cooperative, it's clear that this is the direction things are going in, and this is what we were thinking when we were founding our cooperative. Interesting. Clara Büyermann. As co-founder of Project R, you had to look into different legal forms, and you are a young media company. Why did you choose the cooperative as your legal form? Well, I would say that our reasoning was quite similar to Dominik Vaza's reasoning in the food cooperative. It was about us saying, well, we are a media company, yes, it belongs to someone, but actually we wanted to be independent, and we found it so important in our industry in particular that we be independent. You always ask, well, who does this company belong to? And if somebody is in charge because they own the company in this way, then they can shape things a great deal more, whereas in a cooperative everybody has their say and you have this collective decision making. So it's not about us as the founders having our way or those who have provided funding having their way. Instead, it's about having everybody be have part of this ownership and also part of this organization. So there were several thoughts underlying that, and many of these would have been important to us in any case. Transparency, of course. Through our legal form, we are obligated to disclose our financial figures, to communicate these once a year. And this is not something we simply do because we want to. It is actually anchored in our legal form as a cooperative. And another factor is participation. And this is quite similar to what we heard from the food cooperative, is that a medium, the media, it's for all of us, it's about all of us, and we can't split this so clearly, producers and consumers, that there's somehow a third party decides what should be broadcast and other people simply consume what is broadcast. Instead, it's a much more complex, dynamic construct we find ourselves in today. Readers also have to have a say to a certain extent. They have to choose to read something, and that element makes the cooperative as a legal form so suitable for us because it gives us a very fitting legal construct within which the editorial team can function. So responsibility is shared then across many shoulders, if you like. How many do you have? 24,000 people you have in your cooperative. Well, now, Andreas Appenzeller, you are very familiar with the history of ADEV. You've been part of this since its foundation. you've seen this flourish within Switzerland. How do you see that in the energy sector? Well, cooperatives in Switzerland, this is what was said before, really. It's about looking to work together, to function together. It's not just about money as a means to an end, but instead it's about finding solutions together, discussing with one another if there is a desire to do something differently. If you would like to produce energy in a certain way, like we do, we want to produce renewables, thermal energy, solar energy, wind energy. And we've been doing this for 37 years now. So has the role of the cooperative in Switzerland transformed over the course of this time? Has it further developed, would you say? I would argue that Alfred Escher, 170 years ago, Credit Suisse, said back then that we founded a cooperative, a bank. Then, at the time, it became a company, and in the 70s, more and more, well, the 70s are last century, it was pushed more and more towards a structure with shareholders. And then as soon as that was the case, the presence of people who are really just after money increased, and this has not ceased. And when we first started out, we were chuckled at for being a bit of a minority, and it was not really taken seriously. But now the large investors that we have specifically come to us because we are committed to these sustainable alternatives. And I think this is something that is coming up now. It's about value. It's not money necessarily. Money is a means to an end, and value is something else. It's about having humans be the center of our endeavors and seeing those values then as other than money driven. Okay, so an alternative. Another alternative that we have, Maxuri, FGB Cooperative Bank, says that it is the oldest cooperative bank in Switzerland. What would you say the advantages are of the cooperative legal form for your bank? Well, perhaps just to touch upon this, the longest standing, if you like, we welcome any competition in that regard. But the advantages of a cooperative, well, one thing, I think this is an important factor that was considered during the foundation, is that everybody has their say, everybody has a vote. And for us, that's particularly important because for a bank, it's very easy to have a profit orientation creep through to the foreground. And what we didn't want to see was simply maximization strategies and having these play off one another to see how we could make the most money possible. No, we wanted to approach money with solidarity in mind. You give a credit to someone annually, you're able to give a loan, say, and at times you're faced with negative interest. And if you have negative interest, these kinds of things are very difficult to explain from a mindset of profit orientation, and it gives you more freedom to then have the cooperative mindset. And certain things are simply excluded via the Articles of Incorporation. It was founded in 1984, and initially the legal form of a cooperative was declined. It was declined because of the legal form, and it wasn't until there were some very clever arguments in favor that it was able to actually take root as a cooperative. Our business model at the FGB is that we wanted to continue to develop because we have so much liberty granted to us by our owners, if you like. It's not like we have somebody telling us every year, okay, this year you have to achieve more. We have more freedom than that. Okay, so the bank then, as the very original model of having money come together and then be able to afford something more expensive thanks to this solidarity, being able to take loans. And actually, you had to fight to make this possible. And that is an interesting thing to see, looking back to the past, that you had to really fight for this achievement. Now we have 4 cooperatives here represented today. How do you see the role of your cooperative as part of the greater whole of the economy? And in considering that, is it fit for the future? Well, today we have a great number of cooperatives registered in Switzerland, and a great many share stock corporations as well as limited companies, etc., limited liability, and you can imagine that these aspects we're bringing up today are not always considered when considering the legal form. Let's just say we're looking to the future, we're looking to the year 2030. How do you think the cooperative has taken root in your generation? Does it come across as something on the old side, or is it hip? What do you think, Dominic Vaza? Well, this is quite a personal question, of course. But I think what is certainly important, and increasingly so among my generation, with those the same age as me, is having transparency. It's about having equality in decision making, who is able to make decisions about what, and these aspects contribute to this legal form, in my eyes, being not just fit for the future, but that it has to be the legal form of the future if we are to accommodate the democratic values that young people want to see have representative, and they want to have serious cooperatives, and not just co-op or micro, that from my view aren't really representative of what cooperatives are supposed to be, in my mind. I think it should reflect this, and it's important that you have a cooperative and build it with people who share this new way of thinking. It's not about us simply providing a service and earning money from it and other people having some cool product. It's much more about achieving further development together and making sure that things meet people's needs and have people be part of that. I think you mentioned quite an important point, and I think this is interesting that this has to be made visible to people, and so people can understand this. Clara Raymond, how do you think this is instead at the moment? Well, I think there are good examples for it. If you have more and more contact with cooperatives, be it because you buy food from a cooperative or because you are familiar with housing cooperatives. Housing cooperatives are really quite big now. I think some people are familiar with it because they live in a housing co-op, or other people who are aware of this via a bank, say. So you have this impression of having heard about an example, and then you think, oh, maybe this would be a good opportunity in other areas too. Maybe this would be a legal form to consider when we found a new entity. And it took us a while to think of forming a cooperative. It wasn't our initial thought. Initially, we presumed we would be a stock corporation, a limited company. And then you have this aspect of ownership being shared that just wasn't accommodated for under those other traditional legal forms. And so I think you can take many different paths. There are many different reasons to choose the cooperative as a legal form. It would be interesting to know, Max Ruri, whether you have observed an increase in cooperatives. have you found that there are increasingly young entrepreneurs who would like to form a cooperative, who would like to change their legal form to become a cooperative? What have you observed in terms of the credits being applied for? Well, I think this is a trend, but not just in Switzerland. In Germany, in Austria as well, this is a very clear trend. There is a certain need here, and this is one of the things that has been researched, is that people need to have a certain relationship. They would like to participate in responsibility. People want to make woke decisions, and this is really part of that, especially when you have new entities being founded. It's something that is considered ever more so in housing, particularly. And we really see that there is a need for relationships in the economy that aren't fragmented, where you have a human counterpart, where it's not just walking into a supermarket and you see the shelf and that's it. Instead, the need is so much greater now. And as a bank, for us, if we just say, well, look, this is all great, this is not the point. Customers come to us and would like to say, this is what I would like to achieve, this is a good idea, this is what I want. I want these relationships, I want this interaction, and how can I make that possible? How can you make a relationship economy, if you like? And I think that is what we should be focused on. And organizations that are involved in cooperatives, ADG in Germany, for instance, they are forming this new alliance, and it's more and more the center of attention. Andreas Appenzeller, can you confirm this perhaps with regard to decentralized energy generation? Absolutely, I would underscore that I have had the same experience, that you have this stock corporation, profit maximization mindset that is no longer the trend. And now in many areas, especially in the energy sector, we see that the first energy companies, we were the first cooperative, Baselland too now, those that are founded as cooperatives are still cooperatives to this day, and they then redistribute the energy. But the renewable energies have not come up quite as well in this regard, and we wanted to have renewables and decentralized energies, and we wanted to have that be fostered. And this was really a consensus that was very broadly supported in northwest Switzerland, and it was a bit of a pioneering canton in the sector actually at the time. And we'd like to see that continue to be the case. Really, Basel-Stadt seems to be taking the lead now, but of course you can't say that all too loudly given the rivalry between the city and the rural areas in Basel, but nonetheless, we would like to find a path again to have energy be right on the right path. And if you're oriented too strongly towards money, this is not always possible. So the energy turnaround then is a huge challenge for society, and it is these challenges for society that we'd like to address. Climate crises, a demographic change, democracies that are being shaken up. Now, what contribution can cooperatives make specifically to solving these issues in society? Clara Wiemer. You focus on fostering democracy. At Project R, you want to have journalism become a fourth force. And what is it that you mean by that? How do you achieve that? Well, I think in a democracy, the media plays an essential role. You have people to inform, And people want to be able to make good decisions. And of course, very narrowly, this is political decisions, but even on a much more much broader basis, choices as to which products and services they're likely to consume, etc. And these decisions that are made in our lives are based on the information that is provided to us by the media. And so the media, in a democratic order, if you like, have a very specific role to play. And the media system in general, but specifically in Switzerland, works via large companies that perhaps have a primary customer. That would be the broadcaster that produces the information, and in that way they are buying the attention of their readers or their viewers. And of course that can work, and it has worked to a certain extent. But at the moment, when this system falls apart and the competition on an international level is so much greater, it no longer works so well. It's not good quality, this information. And it's a quality information that is required to have people make good decisions. And we see this on a very large scale in industry in crisis, you could argue. It is shrinking. There are ever fewer professional journalists. And for 20 years, we've been talking about a crisis in financing. We've often talked about, how will we fund the journalism of the future? And it's a huge issue. And what we have tried to do and are trying to do is that we're saying, listen, if nobody else is willing to pay for this, or if we, for whatever reason, whether it be for good information or otherwise, if we're looking to produce journalism, if nobody's willing to put up the money, then we will have to put our money where our mouths are, and that is the moment when cooperatives come into play, and you say, okay, right, we as members of society will put some money in, and we will be able to have a bit of a say, and so we will have a certain level of funding safeguarded for good journalism, so that it is democratic in this way and everybody can be informed and this can work.
And of course, thus enables people to form their own opinion. Is that your task as a cooperative? Well, a cooperative is just a legal construct to illustrate an idea, but the journalism that we try to realize has a stabilizing effect, of course, and hopefully also a transformative effect. Society needs to change, and it changes only when many people take decisions together that take society in a particular direction. And therefore, it's important for many people to work towards one objective, and that requires good information. Therefore, I'd say that yes, we do have a stabilizing effect in a democratic way, and I hope that we also promote societal change by informing society. Yes, Andreas Appenzeller, when it comes to the energy turnaround, you're a pioneer. Can you tell us maybe very briefly, give us an insight into what you do on a day-to-day basis? Well, we believe that we just develop ordinary renewable energy projects, be they to do with water, wind, or solar energy. But maybe I need to describe the decentrality of our projects in a bit more detail. Cooperatives are particularly typical for that. Normally, big utility companies are organized centrally. The larger a plant, the bigger a plant, the more people they were able to supply with energy and the more they were able to dictate conditions. By means of decentralized energy supply, we are showing that you can do things differently. And there's a European Union regulation on energy supply, and it stipulates that energy should be produced locally, and that's very important when it comes to energy generation here in Switzerland. I mean, the same thing applies to journalism too. Everything should be done locally, produced locally. We should not have things produced in China that are consumed here. We know that of many products, clothing, etc., is produced in China because it's cheaper. So I believe that the future is about decentralized forms of production. And many people are beginning to understand this in Switzerland as well. So we are going local, so to speak, from having been global. Max Rudi, what about the Freie Gemeinschaftsbank? You support many social economy players by providing them with loans, locally as well, I believe. Local connections are very important to you. Can you maybe give us an insight into the major social challenges that are solved by the cooperatives that you support financially? Of course, there's many areas. We have heard of many important areas this afternoon. We fund housing cooperatives in particular. We know that housing is becoming more and more expensive everywhere, not just in Switzerland. And this is a development that results from capital inflation. Suddenly, we are spending a large portion of our income on housing. And there's more and more cooperatives in that area that organize themselves to provide affordable housing in the midterm at least. So that's one major topic and one major area that we're active in. And a second area, and I believe that applies to many cooperative activities as well. Another topic is that question that we've just heard mentioned earlier on, the question about decentralization. How can we move away from centralized systems? And a bank is a typical example for a central system. There you have some people taking money from individuals and then allotting it to individual projects. So that's a form of a network in inverted commas. So that's it, symbolic for a kind of traditional center of power. There's no social resonance in that kind of system. I have observed that cooperatives in particular tend to be disruptive in that way. They are not centralized centers of power, as a bank would be maybe, but they rather start connecting their members. It's a totally different approach than what you might have in a bank. Food cooperatives, for example, same thing. You have different members organizing, getting together to form a different type of organization. It's about breaking up centralized power structures and having everyone participate, everyone who's interested. And Dominic mentioned the question of central control earlier on. There are cooperatives that tend to move in that direction, but others want to create a social space that is organized in a decentralized way. Energy, housing, food, media. It's not about all the activity, it's about the structure, about the approach to producing something and about the approach to organizing oneself. And there's one thing I've observed, namely that once social resonance is created, the rules of the game change. Let me give you one example. Let's say I take my savings book to my bank. If I want to choose a bank, I'll look for the bank that gives me the highest interest. We are about bringing people together, projects and investors. But then some people might tell us, well, I don't want to just grow my money. I want to help someone. I want this project to successfully grow and develop. And therefore, we have set up agreements that will stipulate, for example, that 5% is going to be deducted from a loan as a negative interest. So we're turning around a traditional market mechanism. We might have projects that are in difficulty at times. Once if we see that this project is just temporarily being bogged down, that it can recover, we will find people to come in with additional funding. The traditional system where such a company wouldn't stand a chance are changing, and we are seeing different stabilities in stronger stability generated by those kind of banks. So what about your clients? Are they members of your cooperative as well? We have about 5,500 clients and 2,600 members within our cooperative. I think it's similar to ADEF. Dominic Vader, what are the main advantages of a cooperative when it comes to making major changes, generating social impacts? Well, I see a cooperative as an approach. I mean, the important question is to define what social problems are. We have representatives of banks, of the energy sectors. We have in those industries, we have global companies that are more powerful than states, so dominate politics in particular countries. Society is becoming aware that there are power imbalances, there's a lack of transparency and democracy as a result of the power of these big companies. We want to make sure that people realize that they have a means to fight against this injustice. It's an economic injustice, in my opinion. People will understand that they have a chance to participate in decision-making, that they have a say in what is done and what is developed in terms of projects, for example. So I believe that cooperatives are a fantastic instrument to fight against the kind of very negative globalization. It sounds like a huge challenge, but very, very thrilling. Let us now look at small challenges as compared to big challenges we talked about. Let's talk about the establishment of a cooperative. You told me when we prepared this panel discussion that you are taking it very slowly. What kind of challenges have you been confronted with? Do you get the support you need, the support you wish you would get? Well, there's many challenges, of course. And this is why we try to take our time when setting up a cooperative and changing our structure. We need to understand what we're doing first before we launch into this project. We've all grown up in a society where Most things didn't work that way, so it's about getting used to it. We realize that we want to do things differently, so that's one thing. The other thing is that we want to get people to work with us. We want to join forces with like-minded people. We want to be sure that we've taken the right route. And therefore, it doesn't make sense to just establish a cooperative very quickly, but rather take your time and think about it carefully. There's many challenges, of course. But once you've decided you're going to take that path, there's many, many different people who will help you. There's other cooperatives around who have more experience and who will support you with ideas and counseling. So we do get support. Thank you very much. You are a representative of one of those cooperatives that have been around for many years. What do you believe can young cooperatives learn from the established ones? Well, a cooperative needs to be set up in a very credible and safe way. You should not do things overnight. And profit is something that you don't have to or not aim at creating it within a cooperative in the first place. Profits are things you can't take with you when you die. It's about making a social impact. Now, we've heard earlier on that financing is a major challenge when it comes to setting up a cooperative. What do you tell young people, young cooperatives? What would you advise? Well, many cooperatives don't need a loan by a bank. Now, if a cooperative should need a loan, there's a series of parameters, and I mean, talking banking here, certain parameters that you need to observe. I need to distinguish between two things here. Quite often, cooperatives are very unconventional, and they will not fit into a portfolio, so to speak, of a bank. Now, most banks will find that it take too much time to look at this individual case, and the investment will not pay off. And then secondly, a bank doesn't have money that she can just spend without getting it back, because that will affect the profit or the negative profit of a bank. A bank, therefore, needs to first be told about return. And of course, there's different ways of showing this. You can, as Dominic has illustrated, show a bank that you have taken things slowly, that you have thought about what you do, that you're credible, and you have been growing steadily over the past few years. That's something that you can build on. Now, if you need to do things quickly, then it might be that the stakeholders make a commitment with their own money, and then you have a kind of social or contribution of all members of a cooperative. But it's mainly about solidity, about safety. That's one of the most important points to bear in mind. It's about knowing where you're going, about knowing that there's people who do actually buy a particular product. Are you trying to say that people who are interested in financing that kind of enterprise should start thinking unconventionally? Of course, that's very important. It's not about being a romantic, it's not about being an adventurer, but things are done differently in cooperatives. Now, Clara Vioma, let's talk about governance within cooperatives. Are there any things you need to consider, any major mistakes you can make when it comes to governance? Well, of course, now, if I think back to our concrete experience, then we are a very dynamic and new startup. We need to finance ourselves on a continuing basis. Of course, that requires management to be agile. We sometimes have to change a strategy within and take decisions that will affect the way we work and change things every couple of months. We have a cooperative foundation council that represents all of our members, and this council is very helpful and supportive, but it has nothing to do with the way we need to work to be able to finance our activities. So that's two things we need to consider. On the one hand, we have an annual assembly where we can consult our members for major strategic changes, but sometimes there's just not enough time to wait for that extra year, and that requires us to stay calm and be very focused. But of course, a good communicative culture is a central element that will enable you to bring everyone on board. All of our members, for example, are entitled to receive all the important information. And of course, it involves a lot of work having everyone on board, informing everyone of the steps we want to take. And that's something you need to be ready to do. Your figures, all your information has to be made available to all the members so that everyone understands what the cooperative is about, where the strategy lies. This is a major challenge, but it creates trust and confidence and clarity within your own enterprise. So it's well worth it to have a transparent communication beyond your enterprise. Well, as you've said, that definitely is a major challenge. We could continue to talk about this for much longer. We've talked about clarity, about reliability, trustworthiness. I think this discussion has changed. This discussion has showed that a cooperative can bring all of this together. Corporate governance, of course, is very important within cooperatives as well. Yeah. Within a cooperative, of course, you have a great deal of freedom, many options and possibilities that need to be looked at carefully. I would like to thank all of you for taking part in this panel. I bid you goodbye, and dear audience, enjoy the remainder of the Social Economy Forum and the various workshop and breakout sessions.